Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and I do have the follow-up video for the Elementalist Voidforge, and Static Strike is the skill I've chosen. Golem type build. Now I did refine the character several times to the point where I'm well and truly ready to show it to you. Had gone into a pretty big respec in the end, so if you've been following the build, my condolences to your regret orbs, because as I mentioned, the left hand side of the tree might be a bit better than the right hand side, and in the end it is quite substantially better, and I'll go over that in just a few minutes. But just want to show off a bit more of the hot tasty gameplay, because this build is sweet visual eye cancer. I absolutely loved it with the effects. You can change a lot of different herald effects to suit your own little needs, playstyle, niche, but even without herald effects at all, the default ones do look pretty cool too. I've gone into that throughout stream as well. But Static Strike is just a skill that shouldn't really be overlooked too much, because it is quite effective throughout the delving process, it's quite effective through the blight process, and all of these clips at this point are without an impulsor at all, so I swapped out of impulsor into a lore weave, and it is now just purely a Static Strike character that's using the chains and the Herald of Ice explosions to clear everything that you see. It's still very effective. Impulsor itself is kind of just a luxury for blowing up really big packs a little bit easier, and more or less just felt like overkill. I went with the lore weave to get a bit more defense and also a bit more damage into the build, and I think it's the right move in the end. But by all means, you can still run impulsor if you'd rather. There's certainly nothing wrong with that. And likewise, as I mentioned in the last video, you can still build around Onigarashi if you'd instead over the Voidforge, but I think the Voidforge synergy is just far too strong in this build, with everything else going on and the life that it provides as well as the area. It just makes a little too much sense. And then the entire point of rolling a witch as an attack-based character is to have that sweet two-hand witch animation, which looks super cool the way she holds it, at least in my opinion anyway. So the character has gone through a few changes, has gone through up to level 91, and I can say that the single target, the clear, and the overall character is actually very well balanced. You should be able to see that by the end, the character has something like 6,300 life, good leech, mana leech, reserves all of its mana pretty efficiently, doesn't really have any mana problems, and none of the gear is terribly expensive. You're talking like Voidforge and the Anima Stone being more or less the most expensive items in the build. Maybe getting a good lore weave might be a bit challenging if your divine luck isn't too great. But it's just a very well-balanced, well-rounded build, because one of the other things it has is actually pretty good defense. Not too many of my builds have super good defense, but this one did effortlessly get some, with the something like 20% damage reduction from just basically having a Chaos Golem, and then something like 15 to 20% life regen in the end. With this respec to the left hand side of the tree, I am rolling like 900 life regen a second. That's thanks to the Stone Golem and all of the life regen passives we get, and it feels pretty busted. It's like somewhat of almost really effective leech mechanic, but you do have to be careful with certain map types that you're not running like slower regen or no regen if you want to stay at maximum survivability. I did end up running a couple of really high tier blights, and I do want to show one of them to you. This is a tier 15 blight that I would have loved to show you, but ended up being pretty boring. It was tier 15 blight, it had beyond, it was set up to be a big freaking blight map, but my defense was just too good in the end, because you could build a lot of towers near the base pump, and it just let me build a very effective tower defense where my character basically didn't have to do too much, and the overall threat of the monsters was rather low. The tier 13 map I'll show you at the end of the video is actually really insane, and it I think just depends entirely on how you get to situate your towers early on and where you get to build, and if you do, then it becomes pretty easy. If you get kind of shafted, it becomes a very tense and tough map, and you'll see that in just a second. This is me showing off some of the single target in the tier 12 Red Elder category. It's pretty beefy single target for a Static Strike character. You do have to do a few gem swaps from Chain into Close Combat, from Ancestral Call into Ruthless, from Rage into damage on full life if you want to absolutely min-max a single target, but for the most part I rarely do that and only do it for the big special occasions. And you should notice all my golems are still alive. They do seem to survive pretty well in most endgame situations at the moment, though I haven't taken them to the toughest stuff, which is the Uber Order. But besides that, they have not really been dying at all in anything, which is pretty good because they are a large source of our damage. So I want to get into how the character is built now and what everything looks like. So the character is here and now, level 91, yet another summoner build Elementalist. The joke there being, well, summons. Got a lot of them. Kind of another summoner build. Let me bust out the boys real quick just so you can get an idea of what we're dealing with. All of those golems, and they provide a large damage buff overall to our character, just in the form of all their different buffs: damage, damage reduction, crit and hit, regen and attack speed. And you can see right now that my regen is currently sitting at 830. If you're sitting on your consecrated flask, the sulfur flask, you're at 1200, but I'm not too sure we're keeping that in the end, and I'll talk about that in just a second. And as I mentioned, basically the reason that Elementalist looks really good with the attack-based thing is the two-hand animation. I'm currently using, well, a unicycle, but just no weapon skin. You can see the witch there with a Voidforge looks pretty cool, or just bigger, beefier swords. And I really do enjoy the sort of, I don't know, style the witch has on her for that. So that's why I went with this, and that's why well, I made the original Witch two-hand attack, which was Consecrated Path Elementalist, and I do want to mention that you don't have to play Static Strike in this build, or this version of the build. You can probably use just about any sort of melee or clear skill. Static Strike, however, does have some really good synergy with the current Blighted mechanic, and then of course the chaining with the Herald's Device and all of that. So it seems to be just a really strong skill for this meta, I feel, but you can play around with others and see if you like other things. This is probably just going to be a template for Voidforge attack-based witch build if you want to follow it. So you can see that the passive tree, which was over here, is now completely on the left-hand side of the tree. I did explore the entire respec and decided it was well worth it, especially since one of the big reasons for being on the right-hand side is Fatal Blade, and you can just anoint that onto your amulet pretty easily. It's not very expensive, only 2 opalescent oils, and it's a huge damage passive. This passive alone gives me 11.5% damage for the anointment, so that's rather large, and it means that the right-hand side really isn't that cool anymore, since we got all the crit and good sword nodes, and then we end up basically just gaining a lot of life. Throughout the entire respec, I traded pretty much no damage, I think, overall, and gained about 1,000 life. It was just a bit harder to cap accuracy because all of this dexterity does give you accuracy, whereas the strength gives you life and damage instead. So I had to figure out a bit more accuracy in the form of just buying an assassin marker ring that had some accuracy on it, crafted life, and you still got yourself capped accuracy. If you can somehow fit in more like Enlightened Reservation or something, you can level up your Precision Aura a bit. Mine's only a level 1 just for the accuracy and the crit, and you can see that I'm currently at 99%, and the only accuracy I've got on my gear is this ring and then this Abyssal Jewel here. And you do need just a little bit of flat accuracy because you have so much percent and not much to start with. The Ice Golem himself gives you like 100% accuracy, some shit like that. So you've already got a lot of percent, you just need a little bit of accuracy otherwise. So the character's end game setup here is Static Strike, Chain, Crit Strikes. These are pretty much your main 3 clears. You then got Elemental Damage with attacks. I was then running Ancestral Call as well for the 5-link, and then I only just got a 6-link pretty recently, so a lot of the video was in 5-link form, and I attached Rage because it's not the biggest damage support out there, but it will make the clear of the character feel a lot better because it gives you that pretty good attack speed and movement speed that enjoys boosting your map performance. So you sub out Rage for something like Ruthless or damage on full life when you actually want single target, and you sub out Chain for close combat when you want single target again, and then Ancestral Call for either Ruthless or damage on full life. If you're not confident with your life being at full, you can use Melee Fizz instead. That's totally fine. I'm then using my 5-link in my chest for a lot of my golems and some life, so Summon Lightning, Summon Ice, Summon Chaos, Summon Flame, and a minion life support. And if you do have a Sulfur Flask, it's going to keep all of these guys alive pretty reliably, but only recently I also spec'd into life and 1.5% regen, and with that I think I'm going to possibly be able to drop the Sulfur Flask and use a Lion's Roar, which is a huge damage gain, so it's going to be worth doing, and then also a defensive gain from the granite portion of the flask. So chances are I'm going to try and do that, but you don't necessarily have to. This just helps keep your golems up pretty much through all content fairly reliably. The only other super interesting item in the build is the fact that I went with a Circle of Guilt synthesized ring. You get these off of various bosses from the Zana synthesized map boss stuff, and it's the Herald of Purity buff effect one and fizz damage. I think this one was 100C or something to begin with, but they usually run about 1x. It's not a super big deal if you can't get one. Simply getting a Mark of the Shaper instead is almost the same amount of damage, but this also has a little bit of armor and stats to boot on top of that, whereas a Mark of the Shaper would have a bit more life instead. But I think I like this one just for some flat fizz and something a bit different. Other than that, gear is pretty just resist heavy and try and fill out, life, resist, a little bit of damage here with crit strike against shocked. The duration enchant, though you could do some other enchants too. I think duration is the biggest quality of life. And then I managed to just try and slam every single gem into everything, and I was completely busted on gem sockets. I was even highly contemplating an unset ring for some extra utility, but in the end we have faster attacks, Fortify, Leap Slam, Stone Golem up there, War Chief, which is a Vaal War Chief, and then Blood and Sand, Precision, and Herald of Ice down here, Blood Rage, Herald of Thunder, Herald of Purity, and Phase Run down here. Now, Phase Run will keep your 3 stacks of Static Strike up when you press it. So you basically, the playstyle will be to dive into a pack, hit them once, you get 3 stacks of Static Strike up, and then Phase Run through a bunch of enemies and chain everything. So you keep running at that phase speed, and you keep the more melee physical damage buff as well. So it's pretty damn good for Static Strike viability and utility. Aside from that, I did also triple balance Wise Oak. That's pretty beneficial because you then get the triple benefit to the damage reduction and the triple penetration. So I would recommend trying to do that. It's a little bit of a thinking process to get it done, but usually it's not too bad if you have some crafted gear here or there, or you can just buy the right stuff, which I happen to be able to. As far as the Ascendancy is concerned, I did go for the Golem stuff first of all. When you don't have much damage on the passive tree, these passives are going to be absolutely huge. So by the time you get this one in Cruel, you are just trucking through with damage. And my jewels mostly try and fill out some crit multi, bit of attack speed, maybe some damage. Attack speed isn't super important because it doesn't help buff our ticks of Static Strike. So it's only for the initial hits. And then, like I said, Anima Stone gets you an additional Golem, and we do have plenty of these jewel sockets across the board. I also went over here to pick up Mana Leech and Attack Leech. It's not really that important. If you have absolutely no Leech in the build, because I've got a bit on Amulet, if you have absolutely none, then it does benefit you. And the Mana Leech isn't even that good either. I was just surviving off of pure mana regen up until level, 90, I think. But I did pick it up because it does smoothen things out just a little bit. And as far as the path of building is concerned, if you just import it directly, you'll have garbage damage. You have to edit your Voidforge to look something like this. 100% of weapon fizz as fire, cold, and lightning. That simulates the 300% random, and as well as that, your Anima Stone, you want to just chuck on all of the stuff that the Elementalist currently isn't using in Path of Building, damage and buff effect, and also that, chuck it onto the Anima Stone, and then you should have a simulation of your real damage for the actual build. And then I just have the single target selected here with Ruthless, damage on full life, crit strikes, Ellie damage with attacks, and kinda rage. Chain and close combat both won't be really functioning too well, but we're looking at something like 1.8 million on the hit, and then another like 1 million or so on the Static Strike ticks. So you can see single target is pretty good, and we do end up being rather tanky in the build. So it's one I can definitely recommend. Elementalist, attack based, Voidforge. Just about anything Elementalist, I think, right now should be really strong, but this type of a setup seems to be a pretty big winner, I think, as far as a two-handed build is concerned. So I'll leave you with the really thick Blighted map. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. Alright, fuck it, let's just start. Thanks for the prompt. I mean, being melee is pretty undesirable in this shit. So I'm not happy about that. But maybe we just run around and kill stuff and it'll be fine. You have to put shield towers just about everywhere to begin with, and then hopefully eventually and build some damage too. There's no way I'll ever get to build any better up there. That'll get us started. Where did it branch? Right here? Oh man. That's totally fair, isn't it? Hasn't even started spawning yet. What's it doing? There we go. And plus I had my war chief, I just leave him there as acting as like a damaging tower. And that fucking fire damage on the ground is so powerful. Got a boss. Yeah, okay. That's some damage. But we don't want to be a part of. Okay, that's fine. Now we need to start building some shit, right? I need one temporal, actually. That probably should have been a temporal tower. Whoops. Let's see if I can get a temporal there. And then a bunch of meteors to hold the bay. Oh god. The bosses are scary. Dude, no. No, 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 no. Kidding me, mate. I've not been given that much opportunity to build good towers. In good spots, you know. It's not even a temporal yet. Oh, mate, it's fucking spore plumes and shit. Oh, God. I don't have time to fucking build towers here. I'm gonna deal with the bosses, and that's just too much. Yeah. It's going okay, maybe? Oh, man. Is that still Spore Plume? Holy fuck, man. Who's that asshole? Another asshole. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have been using chain. That's mostly what I've learnt from this. Needed a bigger single target for the bosses. Did a golem die as well? Shit, didn't notice that. It's kind of a big deal. Got there. Man, that was a rough one. Just the way it's all coming from different directions, and the build wasn't good at all. Like, not my build, I'm saying the build that they were fucking giving me. A few towers there, and then just like no towers around here until the very end. That's fucked. Alright, how's the loot? I'm lucky to get through that way, for sure. That monster resist, and then the fact that I wasn't like single targeting. Pretty tough. So many sacks now, Jesus. Jesus fucking sacking Christ. Little vermilion ring? Dead. Check in on those, I guess. Shaped as sure. Yeah, I dare say it's a fucking loot pinata now compared to before. Pretty dumb. What are these? Oh yeah, I think I vol them right. In case it randomly hits 4 words. Which it can totally do. Oh man, so much fucking loot.
Too much clutter.